My mom, in order to secure her position as the wife of a wealthy man, locked me, while I was in my heat, inside my stepbrother's room. No one knew that behind his gentle and innocent appearance, this Omega was a vicious wolf at heart. He rubbed my swollen gland and mocked. Useless. Can't even control yourself. Embarrassed, I scrambled to pick up the scattered suppressants on the floor and curled up in a corner. Later, to avoid that stepbrother, I moved into the school dorms. But one day, I was tricked into coming back home. He tied me to the bed, backwards, and his gland, already releasing pheromones, was nearly pressed against my lips. Seeing I wasn't reacting, he frowned in displeasure. What, big brother? Is your lower half broken? 1. The year my mom had finally had enough of being poor, she got absurdly lucky. She matched 96% compatibility with a powerful alpha who held influence in the military, government, and business sectors. On the very first day she married in, she said, "Alphas are all slaves to their lower halves. If it's not 100%, there's always a chance someone else will sneak in." Unlike other Omegas who blindly cling to their mates, she had brains. But she used all that cleverness on her one and only son. Like now. To secure her status, she tricked me into going into the room of a stepbrother who clearly hated me, right in the middle of my heat. If we can get both father and son wrapped around our fingers, then we'll truly have this house under control. She didn't even consider that this seemingly delicate Omega was stronger than most alphas and probably wished he could grind my bones to dust for invading his territory. When I entered the room, Ethan was lounging on the couch in a loose tank top, lazily playing games with one leg crossed. His pale, smooth ankles moved slightly with every action, drawing even more attention to his long, lean legs. He heard the sound, glanced up at me, and immediately tossed his phone aside. Game over. But I had a feeling I was about to get punched instead. Who let you in here? His voice carried a mocking edge. Clearly, he didn't believe I would dare to enter his room on my own. I lowered my gaze and spoke quietly. My mom, she said you must be tired from gaming, and asked me to bring you some fruit. Is that so? He sneered, his eyes turning cold. Funny. I get the feeling your mom's just scared of losing her spot in this house and wants you to force a bond with me during your heat. Take what you want and leave. Do you people have no shame? 2. We still need our dignity. I muttered, trying to salvage what little self-respect I had. Carefully, I set the fruit tray on the table and clutched at my gland, desperately trying to hold back the leaking pheromones. Following the principle of, if I can avoid a beating, I will, I crawled over to the door and grabbed the handle. Click. Didn't budge. Guess this door needs replacing. I turned back and forced a smile at Ethan, who had been silently watching me like I was a joke. I yanked harder at the lock. Click, click. Great. She'd locked me in. Mason. He called my name softly behind me. Raised by a top-tier alpha, Ethan was 2 years younger than me but already gave off the same terrifying aura as that man. I stiffly turned around. He was close now, less than a meter away, standing with the light behind him so I couldn't see his face clearly. I begged. Bro, could you just knock me out and then beat me? I'm in heat. If I resist, I might not be able to stop myself. But he laughed. His teeth gleamed, and it sent a chill down my spine. Mason, crawling into my room during your heat and playing the victim, you and your mom really are a piece of work. No, listen, I can explain. Before I could finish, his hand pressed hard against my swollen gland. His cold fingertips toyed with it mercilessly. And then he released his Omega pheromones in open challenge. Mason, do you dare mark me? Aside from his cold, pale skin and youthful face, Ethan had none of the typical softness associated with Omegas. His bone structure wasn't slight like most Omegas either, but when those upturned eyes of his narrowed in that seductive way, he was both irresistible and infuriating. Even if it was fake. It almost broke my resolve. Doing something like this to an alpha in heat, he really didn't see me as a threat at all. I couldn't take it anymore and scrambled away. Climbing around his ridiculously long legs, I crawled on all fours to the corner near the window. Just hit me here. I bet my mom's already got her ear pressed to the door. I closed my eyes, bracing for impact. Waited. Nothing. I peeked through a slit in my eyelids. Ethan looked down at me from above, eyes full of disdain, and tossed a few suppressant vials my way. They rolled into the corner before I realized my pheromones had filled the entire room. Ethan gave me a long, cold look. You're pathetic. Can't even control yourself. Then he snapped a suppressant collar onto his neck and jumped out the window. The wind blew the curtain high as the screen flapped wildly from the force of his jump. From the 3rd floor. Just like that. Was he really an Omega? 3. Useless. Are you even an alpha? You let an Omega escape right from under you. My mom slapped me across the face, furious. Look at other alphas, they cling to their Omegas during heat like their lives depend on it. But you? Ethan throws pheromones at you and you just freeze. Son, are you incapable? Should I take you to a doctor? Afraid she actually would, I rushed to explain. Mom, I'm not sick. I'm playing the long game. Omegas these days like alphas who are more refined. She didn't even need to think to know I was full of it. Refined, my ass. You're just pathetic. I've never seen an alpha this worthless. With a click of her heels, she walked off in style. I brushed back the messy fringe from my forehead and watched her retreating back, my smile fading. Pathetic? No. I had a secret. A secret I could never tell her. I'm actually a top-tier alpha. I never told her because I was afraid she'd be so thrilled, she'd sell me off as a breeding stud. As a top alpha, my self-control is supposed to be the highest among alphas. Not like the others who get violent, territorial, or possessive during heat. To avoid being ruled by desire, I always act. Always hold back. But the willpower I prided myself on crumbled the moment I met Ethan. Forget his pheromones, just his arrogant, gorgeous face was enough. The day I entered this house, I knew. I was screwed. That kind of primal attraction is the worst. 4. Being in heat, plus the pheromones from the Omega I liked. After holding back so long, I needed a way to vent. So I returned to the underground fight club I hadn't touched in ages. Went back to what I did best. Growing up with my mom, we lived day to day, barely scraping by. When we were broke, she'd force me to steal or stage accidents for money. She constantly told me, staying alive matters more than dignity. And it stuck. If I wanted to survive, I had to give up my pride. One day, by chance, I got into an underground ring. And I realized, I belonged there. The adrenaline, the blood, the shouting. It gave me a way to unleash the darkest, rawest part of myself. Later, my mom beat Ethan's former stepmother by a narrow 1% pheromone match and married my stepfather. Since returning to normal life, I'd been suppressing everything. Watching her fake smiles toward my stepfather made me sick. Pretending to be harmless and agreeable around everyone. It was exhausting. But with Ethan, I always had this urge to possess him, to take him by force. I knew that wasn't right. I should have held back. 5. After 10 back-to-back fights, I knocked the last opponent into the barrier. He collapsed and begged for mercy. The referee blew the whistle. Match over. The crowd roared like thunder. I jumped out of the cage, escaping the pheromone-flooded battlefield. Everyone was buzzing about the fight. The betting pool had skyrocketed thanks to me. It hit me then. No opponent could affect me like Ethan does. Not physically. Not emotionally. The manager came over with a thick wad of cash, thrilled. Hey, when's your next heat cycle? You have no idea, normally this place is filled with broke gamblers. But the moment they found out a top-tier alpha was fighting during heat, all the rich kids with weird kinks came rushing in to throw money at you. I took the cash, stuffed it into my pocket, and took off the mascot helmet. Underneath was a black metal bite guard. Top alphas in heat are required to wear them in matches, standard policy. I had rushed into the ring earlier and messed up the lock code. Tried a few times and still couldn't unlock it. The manager asked if I needed a locksmith. Right then, static crackled over the walkie-talkie. Something's wrong, 2 alphas are brawling. One of them might be the young master. By the time I got there, my arrogant and wild stepbrother, the Omega, was straddling some poor alpha on the ground. Well, makes sense. No one would believe Ethan's an Omega anyway. I realized how pointless my worry was. With Ethan's strength, chewing up alphas for breakfast wouldn't be a problem. But the longer I looked at their position, the more furious I felt. I turned away and melted into the crowd. Then I heard a shaky voice behind me. Mason. Just my name. That was all it took. I shut my eyes and took a deep breath. And realized, all those fights were for nothing. 6. It felt like we had a silent understanding. Ethan didn't ask why I was fighting in underground matches. I didn't ask why an Omega like him was crazy enough to show up there alone at night. What mattered was, the Omega in my arms was currently in a chemically induced heat. After getting him home, I laid him on the bed. His senses were overrun by desire, clinging to my shirt, rubbing up against me. I cranked my pheromone control bracelet to the highest setting, so he wouldn't spiral further out of control. It took forever, but he finally let go. I poured him a glass of water, waited for him to drink, then opened the drawer to grab a suppressant. What I didn't expect. The drawer was stuffed with every kind of suppressant med you'd find in a hospital. Leaning against the headboard, Ethan panted through gritted teeth. Mason, an Omega throws himself at you and you don't even mark him. What the hell is wrong with you? My hand trembled as I pushed the injector toward him. I smiled awkwardly. Come on, don't lump me in with my mom. You can insult her, but not me, okay? Was I holding back because I wanted to? Who the hell can mark someone while wearing a bite guard? Besides, I knew Ethan. He'd never allow anyone to mark him, ever. 7. This wasn't the first time I'd smelled Ethan's overwhelming pheromones. When we first moved in, both my mom and I thought Ethan was an alpha. And a violent one at that. After all, what Omega skipped school just to drag bodyguards into 4-on-1 combat practice? Then one night, I nearly got pulled into heat in my sleep from the pheromones leaking into my room. I freaked out, thinking Ethan had planted an Omega in there to mess with me. I searched everywhere, only to find the scent coming straight from Ethan's room. I kicked the door open. And there he was. Expression numb, knife in hand, slashing open his own gland. When he saw me, something flickered in his dull eyes. Then he casually tossed the knife away. Relax. I'm not gonna die. How boring. As he said it, blood gushed from his neck like a coiled serpent. Dragging him, this boy who seemed so alive on the outside but hollow within, straight to hell. That was when I realized. He was an Omega. And he got through his heats by destroying himself. It was then I knew. This person I was biologically drawn to at first glance was trying to defy his nature. Trying not to give in to instinct. Later I found out. After confirming he was an Omega, Ethan dropped out of school, hired private tutors, and cut off every possibility of leaking pheromones. To the outside world, he claimed he was still undifferentiated. He did all this because of his mother. She was an Omega, too. Driven to mental collapse by her cheating husband, she eventually took her own life. Before she died, she kept repeating, "Why did I have to be an Omega? Even being a beta would have been better, At least I wouldn't be controlled by pheromones. To a 7-year-old Ethan, those words became a lifelong shadow. He didn't understand. But his father told him coldly, "Marrying your mother was a duty. I've found a more compatible Omega now. No one can resist their nature. So being a beta, that would have been better. No instinct. No manipulation. No weakness." But fate had other plans. Ethan turned out to be the weakest type of all. An Omega. One whose only worth, by nature, was reproduction. But he was anything but weak. 8. Ethan went silent, but his bloodshot eyes stayed locked on me. I acted calm on the surface, like the heat and arousal stacked on top of each other weren't affecting me. But my body was ready to explode. Staring at the smooth, sculpted curve of his neck, I couldn't help thinking about the glimpse of his ankle I'd accidentally seen the other day. What would it feel like to hold it? To have him under me? I took a deep breath and focused, pushing the needle into his skin. "I'm injecting now. Don't move, and please don't hit me." 3 shots in a row. At last, the temperamental Omega quieted down. I clipped on a pheromone-suppressing collar and adjusted the dial up, trying to sound steady. "Ethan, you're in heat and I'm in rut. We really shouldn't be near each other right now, so?" "So?" Ethan suddenly leaned in. "Are you heading back to fight again, big brother, my top-tier alpha?" He deliberately stressed the word top, his voice soft and laced with something suggestive. I was honestly surprised. He figured it out just from my pheromones. So now, all my secrets were out in a single day. I stuck to my usual coward act. "Come on, little bro. Don't tell mom, okay? I just want to earn a little more money. You know me, I'm such a loser, I need cash if I ever want to get married." "Mason." Ethan's smile disappeared. "There's no point pretending anymore. A top alpha could have any Omega with just one look." He wasn't exactly wrong. "I'm actually not into Omegas," I said weakly. "I like alphas, the strong, dominant kind." Ethan's face darkened even more. I could feel the whole conversation heading off a cliff. I tried to come up with an excuse to get out of there. But suddenly, Ethan's gaze turned unreadable. He reached up and touched the bite guard I was wearing. I flinched. "What are you doing?" "Mason, you've had this thing on since the ring. Doesn't it hurt?" His slender fingers gently tapped at the lock code. I held my breath and turned my head away. Ethan's voice turned sharp. "Don't shake. Don't move." I froze. Click. The bite guard popped open easily in his hand. Even Ethan looked surprised it worked on the first try. He stared at the device, then tossed it between his hands, playing with it. "Mason, aren't you gonna explain?" 9. How was I supposed to explain that? I'd been harboring thoughts about Mason I really shouldn't have. Worse, my brain betrayed me. The password I punched in on reflex was his birthday. I must have lost my mind. In his eyes, I probably looked like a creep, some twisted, perverted stepbrother pretending to be harmless. Luckily, being in heat dulled my senses a little. Without thinking about my own sensitivity, I bolted. Packed up and moved back to the school dorms that same night. Way less awkward than staying home. After my stepdad married my mom, he sent me to a military prep academy affiliated with the Alliance. The school was full of rich kids, politicians' kids, business heirs, the works. People you couldn't afford to offend. So I kept my head down, suppressed my pheromones, and tried to stay invisible. Ironically, that just made them think I was well-mannered and self-controlled. And with this clean-cut, harmless face of mine, I somehow became the most sought-after alpha on campus. Hard to get became my label. Suitors came in all genders and types, A, B, O, you name it. Even male alphas wouldn't leave me alone. "Dude, your pecs are bigger than mine. If you're on top, I'm down to try it." One time, I was cornered outside the school gates, listening to a very uncomfortable proposition from an alpha. When a cool, flat voice cut through the noise. Mason. I looked up to see someone leaning against a sports car, arms crossed, a half smirk on his face. My dear, dangerously overpowered stepbrother. The moment I saw him, that wave of heat started rising again. No one knew what those next few days were like for me. I went through an entire box of suppressants, nothing helped. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that soft, flushed face, his eyes tinged red. I tried the underground ring again. Beat every opponent I could find. Still couldn't get him out of my system. Eventually, I gave in. Collapsed, panting with one arm over my eyes, ashamed of what I'd done. Felt dirty. Like I'd ruined him too. I thought it was finally over. But the moment our eyes met again, that fire sparked all over again. Guess I really am sick. 10. Bro. Ethan, what are you doing here? I cut myself off mid-sentence, afraid someone might overhear our relationship. Ethan's brow furrowed. When he walked over, he emphasized the word brother with clear sarcasm. Then he said something designed to kill. Am I interrupting something, big brother? TSK. Too bad. Double alpha relationships get fine no matter who's on top. Definitely throwing shade. I politely turned down the confused rich alpha's offer to have fun and got into Ethan's passenger seat. Once there were no outsiders around, he dropped the formalities. Mason. Yeah. I was practically glued to the car door, trying to keep my pheromones under control. Didn't you say you liked alphas? I just ruined your big moment. Aren't you mad? His tone was calm, but the way his lashes lowered gave his whole demeanor a strange, cold edge. I stared at that face, beautiful enough to make gods jealous. You're right. Double alpha relationships get fined. I'm broke. I like betas now. He gave a laugh full of frustration and disbelief. Spun the steering wheel fast and swerved the car, sending it fishtailing. Thrown off balance, I fell right against him. For one brief second, my skin brushed against his bare arm under his t-shirt. And the mental wall I'd built instantly collapsed. Sorry. I didn't mean to. Ethan raised a brow, smirked, and muttered under his breath. Coward. Fine. Coward it is. But then he dragged me into a boxing gym. What was that about? The owner, seeing Ethan's dangerous aura, thought someone was here to start trouble and quickly said. Friendly match, not a real fight, okay? Turns out Ethan pulled out a wad of cash and pointed at me. I want a match with my brother. Got an open ring. I was dragged up to the platform and given gloves. Honestly felt like lightning hit me. He could have just punched me. But no, he wanted to give me a respectable way to get beat up. Ethan, do we really have to do this? He'd clearly never taken a proper biology class, or he'd know. Pheromones can spread through saliva, blood, and even sweat. I already had a thing for him. Right now, I was on the verge of breaking just from my contact. If we actually fought. With physical contact and pheromones in the air. It'd be a disaster. Ethan rolled his shoulders, smashed his fists together with a loud bang, and said. Cut the crap. I know how strong you are. No holding back. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly looked away from those burning eyes. Maybe if he hits me hard enough, I'll finally snap out of it. 11. No wonder every move he made stirred a physical reaction in me. Throughout the fight, every punch he threw was lethal. I dodged angrily. When I took hits, I cursed him out loud. He was difficult to handle. Only by summoning the strength I'd use against real fighters did I barely manage to stay alive under his blows. At last, the two of us collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Ethan called my name. Mason. I turned my head and met his starbright eyes. I'm not that weak, am I? As an Omega, I wasn't as fragile as people claimed. I caught the meaning behind his words. Softly, I replied. How could you be? You're a combat expert whose power overwhelms even top-tier alphas. My exaggerated compliment made Ethan laugh. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him in all the time we'd known each other. It lit him up. I felt like I'd boarded a ship named Ethan. Only when we were deep at sea did I realize there was no turning back. The air fell into a brief silence. Then two voices spoke simultaneously. Ethan, how about school? Mason, mark me. His tempting words made my heart pound, but I pretended not to hear. From experience, whenever he said that, he was testing me. Keeping a serious face, I repeated what I just said. Ethan, go to school. The smile vanished instantly. It was like I'd struck a forbidden nerve. He stood, took off his gloves, and started to leave. I stopped him. If you don't want to be an Omega, you could try being an Alpha. I knew all along he didn't hate being an Omega. At school, Omegas were limited, constantly sheltered, treated like precious antiques or expensive vases. They were meant to be looked at, not heard from. No place for their own thoughts. Why would a tool meant only for reproduction dare have any other ideas? What? Ethan's eyes flickered, expression unreadable. But I could see he was curious about the idea. I can give you my pheromones. With your looks, no one would believe you're an Omega anyway. What looks? He crossed his arms and stared at me like I was about to insult him. I answered honestly. A top-tier face, even better than mine. He froze for a moment. I stared at his wildly confident face, mustered courage, and stepped closer. Wrapping my arms around his waist, I pressed him against the wall. I couldn't help but sniff the scent from his nape gland. Jasmine mixed with a bitter almond note, black datura. A fragrance that can cause hallucinations if inhaled too long. He didn't move or push me away. Like a pet dog letting its owner play. I smiled bitterly inside, he trusted me so much. Little did he know how ruthless an alpha I really was. I released a small amount of my own pheromones, not much, but enough to wrap the stunned Omega in an invisible web. Try this first. Nobody at school has smelled my pheromones before. Alphas are territorial, they want their Omega to smell only like them inside and out. Marked Omegas can only detect their alpha's scent, and others can sense it too. But Ethan was different, his slightly aggressive looks made everyone think he was just a cocky top-tier alpha. 12. Ethan was decisive. A few days later, I saw him at school. He sat at the edge of the basketball court, blending into the crowd, but that face always stood out. After spotting him, I tossed the ball to my teammate. My little brother's here. Game's off. I walked off the court. A beta admirer handed me a towel. Mason, you're so handsome. Usually, I'd politely decline. But thinking of the sharp-nosed stepbrother at home who'd probably complain about my sweat smell, I said thanks and wiped the sweat off my face. Only after making sure I was clean did I go over to Ethan. But the rich kid was just a rich kid, mood swings included. 1 second, he smiled casually, the next, his face darkened. He turned and walked away. I hurried to catch up. What's wrong now, little master? Finished registering? He stopped abruptly, teeth clenched. Mason, I think you're as rotten as Dad. I was stunned, mind racing, staring down at the towel still clenched in my hand. Could it be? Ethan was jealous? Forget it. That was probably as likely as a comet hitting Earth tomorrow. Carefully, I tried to explain. I don't usually take things from them because I'm afraid my sweat smell would bother you. I have nothing to do with them. Who cares? Though he said that, I could tell the hostility on my supposedly cold stepbrother was fading. I think I was starting to understand something. Pushing my luck, I pulled him toward the little forest where couples often met. Mason, am I giving you any face? I wrapped my arms tightly around his waist. He cursed me harshly with his words, but his body was soft against mine. Taking advantage, I leaned in and brushed his gland. Don't move. I think my scent on you is fading. Our real embrace lasted only a few seconds. But those seconds were unbearable. No one knew how much I wanted the person in front of me. To sense his scent, and hope he belonged to me alone. I knew it wasn't just alpha nature, it was the uncontrollable longing for someone deeply loved. 13. To make it easier for him to absorb my pheromones, after Ethan started school, I moved back home from the dorm. Since he was 2 years younger, we were in the same department but different classes. Fortunately, he was well equipped, from suppressant meds to the wristbands he wore. Plus, I'd occasionally leave some of my pheromones on him. No one ever questioned his gender, everyone assumed he was an alpha, and he quickly gained a lot of admirers at school. By day, he thrived. But at night, he'd call me into his room. Like sneaking forbidden fruit. After a simple hug, it was as if nothing happened. Only I tossed and turned, unable to quit, punching more than usual. After letting go of the hug, reluctant, I'd try to release pheromones onto the clothes he planned to wear the next day. The culprit hooked his arm around my neck and pulled me back. The force was so strong he knocked me onto the floor by the bed. I had to be grateful I'd been smart enough to take 2 suppressant shots before coming over. Otherwise, things could have gotten out of control. I awkwardly pushed myself up to escape. His hands suddenly pressed to my side, like an iron chain I couldn't break. He tugged me back gently. Every cell in my body rippled with the intensity of his uninvited closeness. There's a sports meet tomorrow. I need to run. Just hugging isn't enough pheromones. The air froze for a moment. Ethan spoke slowly, his voice trembling slightly. Mark me. I looked down into those calm, emotionless eyes. I thought I could hear my own deafening heartbeat pounding my nerves. How does he ask for everything and still treat me like a tool? The roles were reversed. He flipped over and straddled my waist awkwardly, bringing his gland close. I remembered the way he'd fought that alpha in the underground ring, same posture. But this time, he didn't look down at me with disdain. Instead, his whole body pressed close against mine. His body was very different from the person. Though he had abs, his waist was soft and easy to squeeze. Only in moments like this did I truly realize he was an omega begging me to mark him. 14. I felt like all the breathable oxygen was sucked out of the air. Those powerful, sexy legs shifted restlessly, the deep indent where his knee pressed into the bed making him press even closer against my lower abdomen. Then the omega's pheromones surged out like a flood breaking through a dam. But he still gave me room to back out. He was waiting. Waiting for me to resist, or maybe deep down, he didn't really want an alpha to mark him like a dog spraying everywhere. Ethan, I'm your brother. I held on to what little morality I had left and gently stroked the neck of the person in my arms. Besides, you never took physiology classes after your shift. Omegas who get marked more than 4 times become dependent on the alpha's pheromones, especially if it's a top-tier alpha. You know what that means. It means you can't live without me. Never, ever. Ethan's hand gripping my shoulder tightened slightly. Are you gonna bite or not? Seriously, can you even handle this? If not, I'll find someone else. He moved as if to get off me. I tightened my hold suddenly. I felt like Ethan didn't see me as a person, and certainly not as an alpha. I smoothed the loose strands of hair across his forehead and gently cupped his face. I silenced his babbling mouth with mine. The whole world went quiet. So quiet that all I could hear was our heartbeats and the faint sound of shared breath. Being an alpha is a bone-deep instinct in some ways. I guided Ethan. At first, he cooperated and hooked his arms around my neck. Then, as if realizing what was happening, he pushed me away hard. But because the strength had all been taken by the kiss, he looked more alluring than threatening, completely disarmed. Mason, I asked you to mark me, not kiss me. I know. I wiped away the tears he shed from suffocation. Kissing works too. It doesn't have side effects. Be good, go to sleep. You have a match tomorrow. 15. Ethan had a habit of morning workouts, and I rolled back to my room shortly after dawn. The servant had just brought breakfast to the table when Mom came downstairs. Her silk robe hugged her shapely figure tightly. Even past 40, she looked flawless with all her wealth behind her. She pulled me aside. You useless thing, you're so slow you'd miss even hot food. Ethan's already been marked by another alpha, a top-tier one. I frowned, pretending to be surprised. Really? That's a shame. No idea where he was last night, the scent this morning nearly choked me. Humph. Mom scoffed. So what if he's marked? Just some Omega thinking they can dodge their father's plans. I frowned. What do you mean? Mom said my stepfather was arranging blind dates for Ethan, already lining up several families with strong backgrounds. But this kid was skipping the dates just to go to school. What good will school do for an Omega anyway? I heard tonight's banquet is for him, and the other party is some official's son. That rich kid's been up to no good with Ethan. I suspect they're involved. The scent might even be his. In my mind, I replayed Ethan's calm, almost tense expression when he asked me to mark him these last 2 times. Too quiet. Like he was psyching himself up. Clearly, this wasn't about some dumb sports meet. He was gearing up to rebel against the blind dates with a body full of top-tier alpha pheromones. He really had guts. Oh, and son, you have to go to tonight's banquet too. With your looks, flirting with a few Omegas won't be a problem. The driver followed the GPS on the way to school. I lowered the car partition. What are you trying to do? Ethan had been staring out the window. He turned, ready to snap at me, then saw the corner of my mouth he bit yesterday. Words stuck in his throat. I made a shushing gesture and kissed him without warning. Our breaths tangled. To stop him from banging his head, I cupped the back of his neck. Feeling the Omega in my arms nearly suffocating, I slowly pulled back. A thin thread of saliva stretched through the air. He gasped, unable to speak, just stared. I leaned close to his ear, pretending to be thoughtful. Sweat uses up pheromones. I'll come find you again at noon. The honest Omega blushed deeply but, afraid the driver might notice, clenched his pale hand and stayed silent. Stroking his fur wasn't so scratchy after all. The car stopped at the gate. I raised the partition again. The nervous beta driver checked if I was hurt. Do you need to go to the clinic, Mason? Ethan kicked the back of the driver's seat. Elbow, where's it supposed to go? Then he glared fiercely at me. I shrank my neck and mumbled weakly. If you hit him, you can't hit me. Getting out of the car, Ethan didn't look back. Loose hair blew in the wind, standing on end behind its owner. 16. Ethan didn't come to find me at noon. When I asked his classmates, they said the driver had already picked him up. A bad feeling crept up inside me. I called my mother. That kid's always been strange. Who can stop him if he wants to do something? Mom paused, then said coldly. I've noticed you've been paying too much attention to Ethan lately. Don't go putting ideas in my stepfather's head, we'll both regret it. Probably not going to happen. At the evening banquet, I saw Ethan pushed onto the stage like a perfectly wrapped product by my stepfather. He was treated like a star but cold enough to keep people away. In the crowd, another memorable face appeared. The alpha Ethan had beaten up badly while riding him. A cocky, infuriating look. The night Ethan showed up at the underground ring and was triggered to rut, suddenly all became clear. Turns out he was the rich kid Mom warned about. That rich kid deliberately got close to Ethan, and after getting punched, he held Ethan's waist and whispered something in his ear. Ethan froze, looked down, his tall figure swaying lonely in the lights. As if sensing something, he suddenly lifted his head and locked eyes with me through the crowd. Mom stopped me, warmly introducing the girl next to her. This Omega is the niece of the bank's vice president. You're at the same school, right? Ethan suddenly tilted his head, grinning mischievously, mouthing, Mason. Unaware how charming he was. Sorry, I don't know her well. You two talk, I have something to do. It felt like an invisible chain tied around my neck pulled me forward. I couldn't resist. Every step was like stepping on my own heartbeat. Suddenly, the beautiful Omega behind me pointed and exclaimed. Isn't Ethan a top-tier alpha? How can he be so close with another alpha? 17. The words, top-tier alpha, spread through the crowd like a chain reaction. Ethan's father, the big shot no one dared to cross, approached with an intimidating presence. What do you mean by top-tier alpha? The Omega girl almost burst into tears, stammering. Ethan is recognized as a top-tier alpha at our school. His pheromones are clearly alpha. Stepfather was furious. Ethan wasn't an alpha but was carrying alpha pheromones. What did that mean? The answer was obvious. When Ethan was called over, that rich kid and his clingy bandage followed too. Explain. Stepfather ordered coldly, like one of his subordinates. Ethan glanced at me indifferently, then sneered at his father. There's nothing to explain. It's exactly what you think. Don't you have any shame? Who's the alpha that marked you? What? Are you here to interrogate me, or to bring him in as a live-in son-in-law? Ethan's brow lifted, a mocking smile playing on his lips, loud enough for everyone to hear. Too bad there's more than one. Which one did you mean, father? My temple throbbed. He looked at me with contempt, trying to smooth things over. Uncle, it's fine. I like him. Doesn't matter. As long as he stays loyal to me. Of course he didn't mind. The biggest player and lowlife in this circle was probably this rich kid. With the backing of the military district, he played dirty tricks, and had crippled 2 alphas under him. He picked Ethan because he was a tough nut to crack. Whether he'd dump him once bored. To him, an Omega was just a useless creature that clings to pheromones and takes care of the family. As long as they don't die, they're fine. 18. Stepfather was convinced and didn't care which alpha it was. The rich kid hooked his arm around Ethan, trying to pull him away. Not so fast. I smiled, brushed off the filthy hand about to touch Ethan, and pulled Ethan fully into my arms. Only then did I realize how cold he was, felt less like a living being. His fingers gripped mine so hard they went pale. I pushed my fingers firmly into his palm, locking our hands together. After dropping the gentle act, I coldly scanned the crowd and looked at the rich kid. You don't care, of course. The one who should care is me, because Ethan is my Omega. Those words, coming from someone always invisible and pathetic in the eyes of stepfather and mother, were like a landmine. Everyone was stunned. Ethan was the first to react. He tried to shake off my hand but I held tighter. He sighed helplessly and tapped my jaw. Mason, we're not connected. He said we weren't connected, but his whole body smelled like me. I didn't want to be some dog marking everywhere when in heat. I always controlled my pheromones carefully. That's why, even though stepfather and mother could smell top-tier alpha pheromones on Ethan, they couldn't trace whose they were. But the rich kid had been to the fighting ring, smelled it, and knew it was mine. An Omega soaked in his stepbrother's pheromones, no one would believe they had nothing going on. He shamelessly used pheromones to pressure Ethan. But Ethan was stubbornly loyal, wanting to handle things alone. The rich kid sneered provocatively. Did you hear that, Ethan? You're just a stepson. A toad dreaming of a swan, see if the swan even notices you. Stepfather's curious gaze fell on me, appraising me from head to toe. Mother tried to smooth things over. My son likes to joke. He's pathetic, can't be a top-tier alpha. Let's start the banquet. Suddenly, the rich kid knelt down, and the surrounding noise died away. 19. Top-tier alpha pheromones were different from usual calming ones. They came with an overwhelming pressure that swept everything away. The person in my arms tensed and grabbed my collar. "Don't be afraid, my pheromones won't attack you." I kept soothing him, afraid of triggering Ethan. Mother stepped back in shock. Even stepfather's usual cold expression cracked briefly before settling back. "Even if you are a top-tier alpha, if your pheromone match rate isn't above 90%, you're not a destined mate. I've been burned before. Ethan has to find a high match. Jacob matches him 98%. Such a perfect match makes him the only suitable one." Ethan seemed lost in thought. Maybe remembering his mother who died in front of him. His arrogance was gone. His face was pale, like his soul had been pulled out. Right. No matter how much love there is, nothing beats biological attraction. Just like how the rich kid could easily trigger Ethan's rut. But so what? I released Ethan. Amid gasps from everyone, I calmly grabbed a knife nearby and stabbed my own gland. Blood, just like that day, trickled down my neck. I lowered my eyes, sighing regretfully. So it seems even a permanent mark is useless. What a pity. Hearing "permanent mark," stepfather fell silent. The rich kid stopped smiling and shouted angrily. "You're lying. With your pathetic looks, you can barely stand up. Want to try me?" I dropped the act and pointed the knife at the rich kid. "Too bad I don't like alphas. Before trying, you'd better destroy your own marking glands." Ethan looked up, shocked. Only I knew how filthy his glare was. "You wouldn't even mark me temporarily, and now you're spreading rumors I got permanently marked?" Then, as if accepting it, he pulled out his tie with one hand, pressed it against my wound to stop the bleeding. His skilled movement made my heart ache. 20. Stepfather stepped forward to say something. But my mother suddenly stood in front of me, pointing at him defiantly. "What are you trying to do? My son is a top-tier alpha, a rare breed, and he's protected by alliance law. All that talk about high compatibility? If I showed you a fake report, you'd still be head over heels in love with me. If you love compatibility so much, go live with it then." I didn't expect my usually harsh mother to suddenly step in like that. If only I had pushed for a higher compatibility score back then. Who knew it would actually be 97%? Anyway, I've got enough money and been taken care of well enough. I'm taking this chance to ditch him. I stared at my mother packing her things. She said she was going to travel the world with her money and left me to handle my own problems. Miraculously, the ruined banquet kept stepfather too busy to bother with me. Compared to obsessing over compatibility scores his whole life, stepfather cared more about an Omega daring to abandon him first. The scumbag father chasing after his wife. What's the saying? Evil deeds eventually get their due. Late at night, I licked the drops of blood that had leaked from Ethan's stabbed gland. The person in my arms trembled. The mandrake scent in the air tricked me into thinking he really loved me. I asked knowingly. "You're clearly already known as an Omega to others, so why are you still begging me to mark you?" Ethan pressed against my chest, avoiding my question, breathing hard and awkwardly. "Are you really not going to mark me permanently?" I looked at his rare soft expression, mostly devoid of anger but full of silly charm, and gently stroked his head. "Little brother, don't skip biology class anymore. Do it for me. And, even in rut, don't beg me to mark you again. I'm an alpha, not some monk in a temple eating vegetarian and chanting." I pushed away his neck as he leaned in again and resigned myself to taking a cab to the underground fight club. An Omega permanently marked by an alpha might be able to wash it off. But a permanent mark from a top-tier alpha, like Ethan's mother had, is only removable by death. Even if I could promise that my heart and eyes would belong only to Ethan this lifetime, what about him? His current affection for me is probably just the result of the bridge effect. Someone who's walked a lonely tightrope too long can't help but feel moved. He's so sensitive about being an Omega. 21. In the days after, when we ran into each other at school, Ethan pretended everything was normal and greeted me. I played the role of the stepbrother, asking after him and explaining to any pursuers nearby that we were just siblings. Pure? Not at all. Many sleepless nights, I quietly whispered his name, wanting to pull him into my body. He found all kinds of excuses for me to send pheromones to him. Once again, on my way to a black market fight, I got a message from him, just 2 words. Not well. I called back but got no answer. I told the driver to turn around. Stepfather used his money power to win back mother, and the two went traveling the world. Only Ethan and I were left in the house, besides 8 maids. That day was unusually quiet. All 8 maids took a day off. By the time I sensed something was wrong, it was already too late. A fiercely strong Omega had me tied to the bed. His gland that secreted inducing pheromones pressed almost to my lips. Even a 1,000-year-old turtle couldn't endure like you. Seeing I didn't move, he frowned in dissatisfaction. Brother, is your lower half useless? That same line again. I broke free from the decorative chain, angrily pushed him down. And slapped his ass hard. Useless, useless, useless. My glands are nearly ruined by all these inhibitors. Ethan went silent. The black mandrake pheromones broke through the inhibitor defenses, silently raging. He gently smoothed my furrowed brow and smiled. Mason, you're afraid I don't love you and will change my mind, aren't you? Right in the heart. I fell silent. You think I don't understand anything? Ever since I differentiated into an Omega, I knew everything. A permanent mark means nothing. If you hadn't barged in that day, I probably would have died long ago. Pain always entwines with pleasure, I've understood that a long time ago. Mason, if it's you, I'm willing to try. Please, mark me. Permanently. I gently stroked his back, voice soft. Don't rush. I will love you.